Hello, history lovers! With this being Black History Month, I wanted to focus on that for this video. Now, there's so many people that deserve to be talked about, but it seems like every Black History Month we talk about Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X. Obviously, these are extremely important people, and I hate to think of what history would have been had they never existed. They deserve to be remembered, absolutely, and I am not disputing that one bit. The thing is, these were incredible people, yes, but there are only a handful of incredible people that deserve to be talked about. So, for this video, I wanted to talk about someone that you probably never heard of, and that is Bridget, who was also known as Biddy Mason.
Biddy Mason was born into slavery around August 15, 1818, in Hancock County, Georgia, although we don't know the exact place or date of her birth. As a child, she endured the tough life of a cotton plantation, where enslaved people faced incredibly difficult conditions.
Biddy also learned skills that would serve her throughout her life. She became extremely skilled with medical knowledge, and she knew how to be a midwife, how to help deliver babies. These would be very important to her later, but in the meantime, she had to live the life that unfortunately any slave had to live when her medical skills weren't being needed. She worked the field, she lived a hard life. At some point in her life, she was sold to a man named Robert May Smith. We don't know exactly when. We do know that she had 3 children who Smith may or may not have been the father of. Unfortunately, that was fairly common. There are so many stories of African American women who were forced to be slaves, and if their white master wanted to have his way with them, there was no way to really refuse. Yeah, let that sink in a moment how terrible this would have been. We don't know for sure, but it's possible. Records weren't always clear, like I said, about the date that she was sold to him, but at some point, Smith decided to join the Mormon religion. Now, the history of Mormons is a whole other subject. They're also known as Latter-day Saints. You may have heard of the Book of Mormon. You may have yourself been visited by Mormon missionaries. Well, I don't want to talk bad about any religion. I leave the subject of what somebody believes completely up to them. But here's a hard truth about the Latter-day Saints. It wasn't until 1978 that they let African Americans hold the priesthood. And when I say priesthood, I don't mean like you think of, even if you're not Catholic, you probably saw them in TV or movies, the Catholic priest or some kind of minister conducting a service. Priesthood for a Mormon is completely different. It's a rank within the church that allows you to it does let you lead the services on Sundays, but it isn't limited to one individual. And to deny someone the priesthood means that they can't reach the highest level of heaven in their beliefs. So when he signed up as a Mormon, they weren't exactly going to help Biddy, unfortunately. Hard as that truth is. The Mormons were also kicked out of pretty much everywhere they tried to settle, and they were often moving west, and he joined them on one of these trips west.
They journeyed to Pueblo, Colorado, and met up with a group of sick people from the Mormon battalion. During the trip out west, Biddy took care of animals, cooked meals, and helped with childbirth while also looking after her own kids. Later, they joined the rest of the Mormons traveling to Utah and arrived in the Salt Lake Valley in 1848. In all, 34 enslaved people went with their owners to the Utah Territory.
It's very hard to describe just how hard this journey was. Now, I know members of the Latter-day Saint Church, and I've often heard them describe how difficult this journey was. Biddy would have been traveling barefoot. She had her 3 kids to take care of, all young daughters. She had to take care of anybody who was sick or injured. Terrible heat, very little food, very little water, not good conditions, and she had no choice but to go. But after being in Utah a while, Brigham Young, who was the head of the Mormon Church at the time, the Latter day Saint Church, whichever name, he sent a bunch of missionaries to California, said go convert people there. Smith was one of them, and of course he took Biddy and her daughters with him. Now, California was a free state, and Brigham Young told all the missionaries going there who had slaves, when you get to California, you free your slaves. So it was another hard journey for Biddy, but this time she had hope.
Deserts and rivers. Imagine 1,700 miles on foot, herding cattle, caring for children, facing snowstorms in the Rocky Mountains, the unbearable heat of the deserts, the dangers of wild animals and hostile native tribes. Biddy walked barefoot or in crude shoes, carrying her small daughters when they could no longer walk. At night, after an exhausting day of walking, she still had to care for the sick in the wagon train, attend births, and ensure her daughters were safe. It was 6 months of brutal journey, but each step took her closer to something she couldn't yet fully comprehend: freedom.
Biddy must have been feeling so hopeful that entire way. She and the daughters she loved so much were finally going to have freedom. Now, just think a moment about what it would be like to be both a slave and a mother. Her children could have been sold from her at any moment. She had no control over their fates. Anybody who has ever been even around a child that isn't their own, to think of what might befall them that you have no control over, that's a terrible thought. Now, technically, slavery wasn't legal in California. But if you lived far enough away from others, nobody really did any checking up on if you were keeping a slave or not. That was her owner's plan. Now, things got even worse because at least they were sticking together. But now, he decided to move to Texas after all of this, and Biddy had a pretty good idea of what was going to happen once they got to Texas.
1856, Robert Smith decided to move to the slave state of Texas and sell his slaves there. He promised his slaves that they would be free in Texas. Biddy was worried about being separated from her children and staying enslaved, so she talked to 2 free black men, Charles Owens and Manuel Pepper.
These 2 men would be the saving of Biddy. They didn't have a lot of time either. Smith knew that California judges so far always favored the owner when anybody said, hey, I'm in a free state now. I'm not supposed to be a slave here. I'm supposed to be free. What happened to your laws? But the judges didn't really care most of the time. Things were starting to change, and so Smith wanted to get everybody to Texas as soon as he could. The wagon train was actually just about to leave when help came.
In January 1856, as Smith prepared the wagon train to depart, Robert Owens filed a petition in the Los Angeles District Court. He claimed that Smith was about to illegally remove free persons from the state of California. The sheriff was sent to intercept the group before they crossed the border into Texas.
Just think about how helpless and hopeless Biddy must have felt when she knew the wagon train was about to leave. She must have thought, help isn't coming. I'm going to be sold. My children are going to be sold from me. I'll never see them again. She must have completely despaired when that court order came just in time. But even then, it wasn't going to be any kind of easy win for her. African Americans were not allowed to represent themselves in court, to even speak in court. So it was a simple matter for Smith. He simply paid off Biddy's lawyer to not show up. But Biddy was lucky. She had a judge who called her aside off the record and listened to her.
But Judge Hayes was a man of principle. He called Biddy and the other enslaved people into his private chambers. There, away from the public eye and the former restrictions of the courtroom, he did something revolutionary. He talked to them. He looked into Biddy's eyes and asked what she wanted, and for the first time in her life, Biddy Mason could speak for herself.
If you think that's her happy ending, the best is still to come. You see, now that she was free, she needed to earn a living. Well, how was she supposed to do that? She used her knowledge of medicine, and she was hired by a doctor. And from there, things just kept improving for her.
In Los Angeles. One of the doctors she worked for was John Strother Griffin. She saved her money wisely and became one of the first African American women to own land in Los Angeles. Her land, right where Spring Street and Broadway are today, became a special place for the black community. It was like a safe and welcoming home for them in a time when they needed it most.
Using the money she earned practicing medicine, Biddy invested it, and from there she just kept getting richer and richer. But she never forgot that there were those in need, and she used her money to help others by starting orphanages, schools, churches. She used her money to better her community.
In 1872, Mason, along with her son-in-law Charles Owens and other black residents of Los Angeles, helped start the first African Methodist Episcopal Church of Los Angeles. This was the city's first black church, and they held the organizing meetings in her home. She even gave the land where the church was built. She also helped set up the first elementary school for black children in Los Angeles.
Biddy isn't someone you'll find mentioned in any history book. But how amazing is all that she accomplished with her life. She went from slavery to one of the richest people in California, and through it all, she maintained her kind heart, always helping others. This incredible woman, and I was amazed to learn about her. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it inspires you to maybe look some more into people who are definitely part of Black history who have been overlooked. I'll see you in the next video, and until next time, take care.